Hey guys, so for my 8th reading response, I chose to complete the audio option about chapter 11 in the gunning text, specifically regarding Basal and anthology approach to reading strategies. So I remember when I was in elementary school, I had the McGraw-Hill version of a Basal reading approach, and it focused on comprehension, spelling, grammar, oral language, listening, and it had vocab components. I remember my teacher followed this religiously, and it was probably a part of the curriculum requirement. But being a fourth grader, and I was always, I enjoyed reading, and I was a pretty advanced reader. I did not enjoy that part of the day because it was just boring and like the book mentioned some disadvantages of the basals, which I specifically remember. There were too many questions asked before a selection is read, so like the pre-reading just wasn't fun. We always had these questions to answer, usually about prediction or maybe like identifying some vocab words, and then there's too many questions asked after the piece has been read. This, I remember, we had to answer. It was like short answer comprehension questions, and this was just like my least favorite part of the day, even though I really enjoyed reading. I thought it was interesting that in the reading, a disadvantage of the basals that the author noted was that it only contains excerpts from the book, which I can see how this would be a disadvantage, but I think it could also be an advantage because it kind of hooks the reader. So if they enjoy the excerpt, they could maybe go back and read the whole book. This would obviously need some guidance from the teacher in order to get students' hands on the actual text and not just the excerpt. But I thought that was an interesting, maybe contradiction about the disadvantages versus the advantages. I also liked the part where, this was on page 472 in chapter 11, the author said that the ideas are canned or created by someone in an editorial office far from the classroom. Really, this kind of captured the Basal approach for me, like, spot on. Basically, like, it's designed to be all things teacher, but the person creating them isn't in the classroom. They're not making lesson plans around these Basal readings. And I just really sort of thought that highlighted the Basal approach. Also, I thought it was interesting that the Basal approach doesn't really meet the needs of below-level readers. I specifically remember, like I said, even though I was sort of like a higher-level reader in my 4th grade classroom, I still didn't even enjoy the reading section of the day just because it was so boring and centered around these Basal readings. So I can't even imagine being a below-level reader in my classroom trying to accomplish what I was doing in the 4th grade, specifically with this McGraw-Hill curriculum. So I liked the section that talked about adapting basals for specific readers. It mentioned to use the workbooks and other practice materials judiciously, but really I think it's good that teachers are able, it's good to have a curriculum that you can follow, but I think it's also important to remember that you can do other things besides it and still meet your curriculum needs and requirements. I also liked how you can adapt basals by emphasizing a wide reading of a variety of materials. Students have to read, I remember I had to read a broad range of, like, from fiction to nonfiction to autobiographies that were included in the textbook, but it's really important to expose students to a bunch of different reading options and really get them reading for pleasure, not just having this specific reading time that's boring and structured within the classroom. But yeah, that was my take on the Basal approach. Hopefully something that we won't really have to deal with, but I know we probably will as future teachers. I also wanted to mention that it seems like the Basal approach is used within like a more gen ed setting. So I know I'm a special education major and I might not see